Hey, I'm Tim,
And I'm Sarah.
and this is Mic'd Up Marketing, a segment of the Brand Roots podcast. These are the conversations we're having anyway, whether we're deep in a strategy call or talking shop after a client meeting, but now we're micing ourselves up and hitting record. We talk about the ins and outs of running a brand studio, what's working in marketing, what's broken, and how businesses can actually grow with strategy that makes sense. From stories about brand pivots to questions like what even is story brand, or who are you really selling to? This is a space for honest takes with real insights. So if you're a creative, marketer, or business owner trying to figure it out while building something meaningful, you're in the right place. Now let's get into the show.
We just want to start out by saying we have such wonderful clients and we have been blessed with that. We have learned so much. So these are just lessons that we're personally learning, and we hope that they help you as well along the way. So we want to start off with the first major lesson that we've learned in our journey as business owners. And it's definitely number one is managing client communication and expectations. So this is probably our biggest early mistake, was not managing how many voices had input. There were too many people involved, leads to confusion, and it kind of like diluted the creative vision. And I remember like specifically one time we did a photo shoot and there was Tim, he's supposed to be directing, I'm being producer, and then we were trying to just work with that one client when it's their turn on camera. And then other people in the company were now actually taking on Tim's role as director and my role as producer, interrupting us. And it was actually making that person feel really nervous on camera. And I'll take responsibility for that one. As the producer, I should have said, you know what, guys, enough, please leave. Let's just have this one person be on camera. They don't need feedback from you because you don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, I think with something like filming anything or even photos, it's always going to make it so much more difficult with more people in the room, just because you have this critical eye. You know, you have these people who are anytime we've filmed, and I think this is pretty common, that when you get in the mindset of filming someone, and especially for a lot of the stuff that we're filming for companies, like they don't have experience on camera. We've worked with people who know what they're doing on camera, and so then it flows so much easier and better when we're filming with them. But for the vast majority of our clients, they don't have that. They don't know about camera presence. They don't understand about tone and how you should inflect on certain parts of when you're speaking to camera. You know,
Yeah.
like it. And because of all those things, because it's a new experience to them, it's like they feel the most insecure they could possibly feel when they're on camera. Because like, all right, do I look fat? Do I look not? You know, like it's all these thoughts are going through their heads, and so they're feeling so much already self-conscious.
Yeah.
But then you have all these other voices kind of chiming in, and especially it's people who are not the ones creating the content, and so it makes it that much more difficult and annoying on our end when we're like, all right, let us do the job so that we can do this right, so the other person can feel comfortable on camera. And so that was something that, you know, I think, I wonder if it's part of it, Sarah, is that I don't know if it's like the people pleasing in us or
Definitely.
well, you know, because like, oh, well, I don't want to interrupt, or I don't want to, like, oh, maybe they, you know, like, and we're afraid almost to like say, hey, let's just limit the amount of people speak. And now, obviously, we have the confidence now to do that. But you know, when you're first starting out doing this, it's just kind of like awkward saying, hey, by the way, maybe can you go in a different room? Actually, we want to make sure we're filming this ourselves and not having too many voices. So any thoughts about that?
Yeah, totally. Also, I remember during that specific shoot when one person would give feedback that isn't supposed to be giving feedback, another person would come in and say, no, actually, they should do it like this. And that even led to more confusion. And
yeah.
I do think part of it's the people pleasing. I think also if you're a creative studio owner or an agency owner or a freelancer, or even just like it's B2B, there's this weird dichotomy of thinking where, yes, you know that you're a business working with a business or an individual working with a business, and you would think that you would feel equal to that business. However, because you are hired by that business, it's almost like you put them on the pedestal and it's okay, well, whatever they want goes. And that's actually then technically not B2B.
Yeah.
It has to be equal. And it's a very hard thing to get in the frame of mind for, but I think it's a muscle that you just have to flex, and we've definitely become more confident. So I would say the solution to that is you just assign one decision maker on the client side and then one main communicator on the studio or the agency side. And that kind of leads to another lesson under that branch is with one project, we actually told the client how many photos we took and it backfired. And so with photo shoots, you might promise, let's say 30 photos, but you're not just taking 30 photos. You could take 1,000 photos in a single photo shoot. And we accidentally said, yeah, we have I forget the number, but I'll just say
it was
1,000.
I was removing some photos from my Lightroom right now because my cloud storage is up. So I'm like, all right, let me shift stuff to local archive, and I was going through them today actually, and it was 1,400 photos. And look,
Oh my
we're not
goodness.
putting this client on blast. It's our fault. This is something that, in my mind, I was like, oh, well, if I tell them, it's almost an impressive number. And the reason it was, because it was a couple hour photo shoot of headshots and different stuff. And I think the photos turned out beautiful. And it was great working with them. So it's not,
Yeah.
we love working with them. They're great. And they're great on camera. But I had taken close to 1,400 because I'm just trying to capture them authentically, And so I'll do a burst mode photo, and it'll get 20
Right.
photos in a second, and so I'm just trying to capture that. And I guess, I don't know if it was just me trying to build this actually how many we captured. And then the final deliverables are maybe 50 photos, of including everyone's photos and the group photos and stuff. And then they're like, oh, well, I expected more. And I'm like, yeah, that's definitely on myself. So another real good example of that is with wedding photography, because they're probably taking thousands of photos over the course of 8 hours or so.
They're not missing a moment. They're not missing a second.
Yeah. And with that, you would think, oh, well, I'll get 5,000 photos. But in reality, they're whittling it down to the best of those, the photos, because even a lot of those photos, it's you're kind of half blinking, you're awkwardly smiling, you're capturing the bad in between moments,
wedding cake is coming out of your mouth and it's stuck in your teeth.
Spit is just flying across the room. But and because there's a difference between the good in between moments and the bad in between moments. The bad in between are the awkward, oh, that's a really awkward, ugly face you're making. The good in between is you didn't realize someone's taking your photo and you smiled in the most pure way.
Right.
And that's what I love, being able to capture that. So
that was definitely a big lesson, because it became a negotiation point. They're saying, well, no, I want to see more because you told me that you took this many photos. And this is actually a very common story that I've heard from other photographers or agency owners. And so what the lesson was, okay, we need to clarify up front how many assets they'll receive. So if we promise 100 photos, they know that it's not. And then if we take 1,000 photos, it doesn't matter. They're only getting 100. And we then keep that number internally. So and a good rule of thumb that we have followed in our business is we really try to over deliver. So I think every single client we have worked with, if they ask if the deal is 50 photos, we'll typically give them 100, or we really just try to give more than is paid for. That's our hearts. But we don't ever want to overexpose our process. And so there was that. And then I think a final lesson just under the same branch of managing client communication and expectations was we missed a follow-up after a shoot once and it left the client hanging. Now, there is some grace I give us on our end for this because around that time, there was a huge family emergency that our family went through. For anyone who doesn't know, Tim and I are actually brother and sister-in-law. He married my sister, and
she's my annoying sister.
And she's my annoying. No, she's the best. Deborah's the best. And well, that's awkward. Okay, so I thought you were talking about Deb. I was like, no, she's wonderful.
Obviously,
Well, obviously.
I married the best
And
one.
you did. And anyway, so Deborah is just, yeah, she's great. But so Tim and I were brother and sister-in-law, and so we have the same family. And during this time, we went through basically a family tragedy, and our focus had to go to that. And I had to, fly to a different part of the country to go, kind of help take care of it and stuff. And so it just, in a perfect world, we would have followed up with this one client after a shoot, and we didn't. And so the lesson was, look, even if you think you're done, always follow up. Just even like a post-shoot check-in is a must, but that was definitely, like, I think a regret that we both had. So, and that kind of, I'm curious to hear from you, Tim, on like what's something that you look back on and you're like, oh, that was definitely a lesson or lessons learned.
Yeah, I say this is probably one of the most important things, this next lesson. And I recently talked with a kid, and he's not a kid. I mean, I'm 30 years old. Everyone who's lower, like younger than me, is a kid, basically.
Yeah.
He must have been in his early 20s, and that's basically a child. So he's in college, and he want to ask me some questions just because I've been doing this for about a year. But even this doesn't seem very long at all. But it's not. But it's like a year has been like 10 years compacted into 1 year. That's just how it's felt. But so he's asking for wisdom, and something I really hammered in was this exact lesson. Actually, was clarity in pre-production. Before you ever step onto a shoot, before you step into meeting with the client in person, like, you need to get everything, all your ducks in a row, because this is where you really can kind of align with your expectations, and it kind of blends really nicely with that first lesson you talked about before, which is, hey, how many photos are we expecting? And sometimes it's hard to know that. I think you just have to say this is the amount you're getting. So if it's, a photo shoot of, like, let's say 5 employees and group shots, you go, all right, so we're going to do 2 locations for each employee. We're going to do 5 photos for each of those scenes, or 3, or whatever, and then we'll do 5 corporate just group shots. And that way you have a firm number, and then, like you said, Sarah, before, like, then you can just blow them away by adding extra on top of that. So I would say, the lesson's always like under promise, over deliver. But that also, all that stuff comes in pre-production. So, and so some of the notes I have here, like when working with, some content creation or video, over clarifying upfront could have saved us. There's a couple of times where it's like, it's stuff, it's like, oh, that makes sense. Why didn't you think about that sooner? But it's like, unless you're in it, I don't know. Sometimes it's like, it's hard to see the forest in the trees,
Yeah,
So,
totally.
like, there's this one client that we had, and we're filming.
I know what story you're gonna share.
It was a video series that we did, and the videos, I think, turned out great. They were about this product, and we used one of Sarah's other sisters, her older sister, in the video, and she's just, she looks like a mom, and she had, like, ripped jeans, which is, like, I would say 99% of people, that it's like, it's not even, you wouldn't even think about it, because you're not looking at ripped jeans and thinking one thing or another. But with this client, and I'm not using conservative as a derogatory, because I am conservative, but this client was overly conservative when it came to the video. And they saw the video, and they were like, you need to crop these photos or videos, because her jeans are, there are holes in her jeans. And to be fair to them, it's like, it wasn't tiny holes either. So it's like, all right, well, I get it. It was frustrating for us, but in hindsight, just now, because that adds a step now in a good way to our pre-production. Now we know we need to clarify wardrobe. Like, hey, what's the expectations for this character that we're putting in this video, for this brand ambassador? Because I get it. I think a lot of people, and rightfully so, are guarding their brand, how their brand is viewed. And if a mother, with ripped jeans is not in their brand image, I guess, all right, well, I can't fight you on it. And so that was one of the big lessons. And with that comes, like, specific wardrobe, like I was saying before, like wardrobe and the content style, and having kind of a list exactly of what you want for the videos. Color palette, for the do's and don'ts, setting even a pre-production questionnaire to cover all these things. What's allowed, what's not allowed, preferred tone, branding boundaries, and like I said, clarifying actors dress code, like, can we wear this, can we not wear this, and I would say the lesson should be lean conservative when it comes to clothing choices, because you're almost never going to go wrong if you lean conservative. But do you have any thoughts on that, sir?
Totally. I think it protects you as the business owner or the photographer, the freelancer, because what we have found is that when we ask people clients one time, like, hey, what are your expectations of this? They don't say much.
Yeah.
And then after there's deliverables, all of a sudden they have all these standards. All of a sudden they have all these opinions, and it's like, well, why didn't you tell us that first from the get-go? And what we found is just you have to almost like spell it out and think of things that they're not really thinking of. Part of that story was before we even did the shoot, scripts had to be written. We do script writing for our clients for their videos, and it takes a lot of work off for people. It's a huge undertaking, but I remember writing these scripts almost like immediately. And I sent them and they were approved. And then once they were delivered on camera, it was, wait, can we switch this? And can we switch that? And it's like, wait a minute, you approved this though. And so it's almost like you have to have every part of the project go through all these checks and balances and question if they really mean it when they say, oh no, we don't have any expectations. No, we give you full creative freedom. I will never believe a client if they say that, because I know that in their heart of hearts, in the soul of who they are, they definitely have some kind of expectations. And maybe in defense of them, maybe they don't even fully know what they want until like it's shown to them and they're like, oh, well, I didn't think about that. And so it's a learning experience, but yeah, I think that goes into that same vein of just be like over clarify, like almost I'd rather annoy them in over clarification than not do that at all. And then now it costs our studio more time, money, resources to try to fix what they were not willing to communicate.
Yeah. And then kind of with that same thing about communication is communication from our end. Well, like, and the big lesson, that's the thing that everyone always talks about when it comes to creative studio or freelancing, is it's scope creep. And scope creep is creepy. It's scary because
it's scary.
It's scope
It's
scare.
Our personal hell.
Yeah.
We hate it.
And I think, I was talking to my friend Sam about this. Scope creep is what happens when the client is either too, like, kind of like what we were saying before, like the people pleasing thing. Scope creep happens when either you're too shy or too insecure or whatever to stand up to a client, or when there's no clear boundaries drawn, and the client might want to cross boundaries that they don't fully know are there, even though they might have an idea. And so, we've dealt with this definitely before, and it's so the lesson, from from scope creep is, again, clarity and pre-production. If you're doing a video series, don't just say we'll do some videos for you. What you want to say is, we're going to do 5 videos of this and 3 videos of that. And within that, you have the most expectations already up front, And I get early on, because I think what other clients or people who don't own the studios themselves, what they don't understand is you're usually in competition with a lot of people to get the job. And for stuff like, for me and Sarah, like, we are obviously a young studio, and we have experience obviously doing the work, the technical components to the work we do. Like, the work we do good as well. The work we do good. The creative work that we do, we have expertise in. We've been doing it for years. So whether we're designing something, we're doing videos, Sarah did copywriting and marketing and strategy, like, we've been doing this for years. So that's the stuff we're super confident in. But the stuff that we're newer to is the B2B part of that, working with clients and making sure we're winning projects for them.
Right.
And this is why people fall into scope creep, including ourselves, is because, and this is what I've done this a few times, and I'm most guilty of it.
Yeah. Just kidding.
Because what I want to do is, if I throw in this free thing, we'll win the bid.
Right.
all
Yeah.
their objections will be thrown out because, oh, well, oh, okay, well, that's valuable. And in hindsight, I'm glaring at my older self. It's like that scene in Interstellar where
Yeah.
he's in the Tesseract. He's like, no,
No,
no.
no.
And
The
that's me
worst.
looking at myself drafting up the contract,
Yeah.
and not being, I would say that's one of the perfect examples and images of not
Funny.
clarifying things because you're like, no, clarify. You're gonna, saving yourself so much heart and soul, your so much time and energy because you're like, this project was so much bigger than I thought it was going to be, and not
Oh
even
my
just bigger, it's
goodness.
so much more time consuming than I thought initially it was going to be. And so
Totally.
because of that, because these projects are bigger, then we realize it's so much more time consuming and it becomes more expensive for us. It's not like we're working hourly or something, but we it's just like that means we can't either grow as a company if we have to work on certain projects. I can't dedicate my time to the entrepreneur part of the business, or I can't work on other clients' work because I'm stuck on a couple projects. And it's not like we have a team of people. It's like it's just us. So, all that to say is, if there's one lesson for creative studios and freelancers, it's please, please, please define your terms, all of them. Define everything. Lock down your looks, lock down the brand voice, lock down everything in pre-production before you even start shooting or roll up to a set. And you really need to qualify and educate in a way your clients, which, Sarah, if you have any thoughts leading to the next
Yeah.
one.
The visual of Interstellar, that scene, I think people could apply that scene to so many different aspects of their life, looking back at past mistakes. It's like, no, no. But yeah, just set boundaries. I mean, be firm in that. And I think actually people will respect you more and you'll respect yourself more and you'll feel more confident. And it's hard saying no.
So true.
It's so hard to say no, but you don't want to be a pushover,
Yeah.
and you want these businesses to respect you just like you would want to respect them. So I think it kind of leads nicely too into the next lesson, which is presenting and educating your clients. So this kind of because everything that we do, we have to give like a preface to it. So just like how we were talking about hey, we need to preface all these standards and everything. What you also need to do is give preface and context to what you're actually presenting on those deliverables. One time we didn't present a logo properly. We just sent it to them. And that was a huge mistake. So anyone who's worked with us, besides this one client, they know that we do a whole beautiful presentation on the logo. Tim, it's actually one of my favorite parts of the journey because Tim will actually educate them on what a logo is. And I've actually learned so much about this, and I've been reading books on logos because Tim takes care of the graphic design, and I'm just learning so much. And I'm like, wow, like logos are not all the same, and it's the visual representation of your brand. It's the first thing that people see. And Tim will do a beautiful presentation on like, hey, what kinds of logos and all the differentiating aspects of them. And when it came time to the presentation, we didn't present it. And so the client, they didn't have an understanding of what that logo meant. And actually, I think looking back, Tim, I think it's one of the best logos you ever designed. Like, I loved it. And I remember you put it in context, like in a picture of what it could look like for them if they were to utilize this. But we didn't give a presentation on the creative decisions that were made to get to that point. So they didn't understand. And so clients don't just need deliverables and design work, they need context. They need to be educated. It's like how I kind of compare it to, I recently went to Italy and I went on a tour that was so cool. It's probably one of the coolest things I ever did in my life. And the tour guide said something interesting. He said, you can't come down here. I went into these catacombs underneath the city of Rome. And he said, you can't come down here without a tour guide. And it's not because it's dark. It's not because you'd get lost and everything, even though that's part of it. He said, you don't know what you're looking at unless you have someone to explain it to you. And I used to be kind of against tours. I was like, I don't need a tour guide. I'm a traveler. I can see the world by myself. I now want to do tours in every city because I learned so much from that tour because I had someone who was educated in that area to show me everything that they knew. And he had spent thousands of hours in those catacombs. Like, he was passionate about it. And so now I got like a semester's worth of education just from that 3-hour tour of learning about these catacombs that are under the city of Italy. And it kind of reminds me of that. It's like, you have to educate people because otherwise the client, they don't know what they're looking at. Sometimes some logos are very obvious, like Coca-Cola. It's like, it's Coca-Cola. There's not really like a lot of thought process from the onset that goes into it. But if a logo is more abstract or it has a little more creative imagery to it, you need to let that client know. And we didn't do that. And that was a big mistake. Any thoughts from you on that? Because you were the one who initially created it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the problem even with that went a little bit further back, and it kind of goes with the previous lesson about like aligning expectations within pre-production, because that was one of those things I kind of threw in as like, oh, let's win this bid kind of thing, like, hey, let me do.
Yeah.
And I did it for a couple of reasons. One, because I wanted to have more logo design work in our portfolio, and two, because I wanted to win the bid for the project. And so, with that client, with that logo I designed, we didn't do the normal process we did for logo designs. That's where I had this idea and I designed it, and I'd been working on it for a few weeks at that point, on and off, and then I presented it, and we didn't present it how we normally present it. And so because of that, because we did do a lot of the earlier legwork that we, again, normally do with our branding projects, because it was kind of this free add-on I did, it kind of
Right.
devalued our work, and that was the big thing. I think it devalued the work, and they didn't understand the value of it, really.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I'm reading Expert Secrets again by Russell Brunson, and
Great
it's
book.
funny. A lot of it's so funny, man. I'm man, girl,
Sarah. Hello.
But in the book, he talks about a lot of stuff. Obviously, he talks about building frameworks, which is something that we're actively doing for ourselves at Stumpin', and then also talks about starting a podcast, which again we just started again. So I'm like, oh man, this aligns so perfectly.
Hey.
And then the other thing he mentions is that he has these like $50,000 mastermind things for the year, and he says that he's invited like people like his family for free, and they'll sit in there. But none of those people have gone on to make multi-million-dollar businesses. But the people who have paid to be there, they're the ones that value his words and really put it to work. So
Right.
I would say that's like a kind of a tangential lesson in this, which is they will value it if you give it value. And if it's this free thing, it's in this nebulous, and if it's free and you don't give it proper value, they won't value it. And that kind of goes with the presentation component too, because it's like, if the presentation is part of the thing that gives it value, like,
absolutely,
it's kind of like we've talked about, like when they've put like these like Foot Locker shoes, and they'll put it in like this really high-end store, and
I saw a video on that.
And those shoes are worth 100 times more than they would be if they were, at Foot Locker or, so anywhere, pay less or whatever.
And, it was pay less.
And so with these shoes, the value came from the perception of the value, not because the shoes are any better made or worse made, whatever. It's the value is strictly something that is given to them just by the context. And when you remove the context, or you remove the presentation as it in the fullness of it should be, then it's like they're not going to value it, especially when it's something that's given for free, so. Yeah,
that case study that Tim's referring to I literally just watched that the other day. It was like 2 days ago or something, and it was pay less, and then they took $30 shoes and put them in this store called Paylessi, which is more Italian sounding, and they they decked it out, and they had like security guards everywhere and like gold emblems on the wall. And then they ask the customers, how much would you pay for these shoes? And one of the girls is like $300, $400. No, I would definitely pay $500. Like, it's the quality is unmatched. They put their money where their mouth was because they actually handed their cards over. And so the store starts making thousands and thousands of dollars. And then they reveal to them, hey guys, these are from Payless. And the look on these people's the looks on their faces is priceless. But you're right. It's all about perceived value. That was just definitely an interesting, unique experience. And so we just know, okay, we have to, whether it's an add-on or not, no matter what, we give the same presentation. But I agree, you value things when you pay for them. And so, and that kind of, I wanted to touch on another lesson under the same vein, which is we once underestimated the scale of a website project. And this is, I think, collectively like our biggest regret as a creative studio. We're just like sharing all the little secrets here. We wanted to be honest because I'm like, hey, if this helps people, then it's worth it. So we don't want to act like we're perfect because we're not. But this seemed like a very simple project because we had done a previous website that was smaller, but we got the hang of it. We had done our own and it seemed simple. And then it very quickly became overwhelming because we didn't fully plan the scope in detail, which kind of circles back to that initial scope creep issue. And then we should have been more transparent about timelines, workload, and the client's role in like content and feedback. And there's different aspects to a website. It's not just, we're not using like AI to build this. Like Tim was designing it. I was, helping come up with like the layout of it. Tim created these beautiful graphics. We were doing copywriting, research, like all of this stuff, and then photography to really make it worthwhile. And I think something that we learned of that is, again, it's funny, all these lessons kind of coincide with each other, but we should have gotten the client more involved in the creative process of it. Because again, some of these clients, they're like, no, it's fine. It's just like kind of whatever you pick. And then you present something, they're like, oh, well, that's not what I had in mind. Oh, what did you have in mind? Oh, I had this in mind. Okay, then why did you tell me that? But in their defense, it's like, well, we should have asked. And really, we should have spearheaded that. And it's almost like you have to interrogate them. Like, no, tell me what you want now. So we would have gotten the client more involved in the deliverables and assets needed to complete the project. For example, just like as a lesson takeaway, if you're working with someone, let's say it's on a website, and they say, we need this website by May 1st. Okay, then we can get that done. And then there's another party involved in this. It's not just you. They have to send you things, whether it's information about products, pictures, videos, like there's stuff that they have to fulfill on their end. And you say, hey, I need all that information and all those deliverables by April 1st. And they agree to that, but then they don't send it by then. Guess what? That has now pushed back the due date because they're not fulfilling their end of it. Yeah. And that's where you have to kind of checkmate them in a kind way and be like, look, if you're going to hold us to the standard, we have to hold you to the standard because it takes two here. Because unless you're working all day, every day internally in that company, you're not going to have access to all those things. You don't know, like we've worked with some companies that I'm like, I don't know anything about how this product works, but I'm learning it. But I have to rely on that business owner to look at my script and be like, this is accurate or it's not. Mm-hmm. Because how would I know that? Like, I don't know how shed doors are created. Now I do because we've worked with the shed company. I didn't know how like skid steer attachments were made. Now I do because I've seen it. But from the onset, you don't know. And we know how to do the skill sets of marketing, the skill set of design, the skill set of making videos, the skill set of making viral videos. But we don't know like the ins and outs of how their business works. So that's where it comes down to. You have to hold them to a standard too. Yeah, it's all collaborative.
And with that, like it's as a studio, I would say 90% of the time, it's like it's the studio's fault. Like
Yeah.
because it's like when people get mad at kids when it's their parents who should be, like controlling their children. Like
Yeah.
it's like, why doesn't my kid eat? It's like, well, are you feeding them junk all day and when they don't eat dinner you just give them junk food anyway? Yeah, then you're the problem. you know
Right.
like it falls on you as a parent if your child's misbehaving routinely. Sometimes it's like, all right, they're hormonal, there's stuff that is beyond your control. Like my daughter could be that way, where it's like sometimes she's just in a mood and it's not because we're not raising her right, it's just because she's growing and she's in pain and she doesn't know how to express it. But
Yeah.
other times it's like, all right, well, are we making sure that she's not being spoiled? And so, to bring it back to our clients, is like, if we're not managing expectations, if we're not communicating timelines
Yeah.
and the levels of participation from both ends, if we're not setting the scope properly, and if we're allowing clients to push back too much, where they are kind of not intentionally necessarily, but they might be taking advantage of it,
Yeah.
then it all comes down to the client, or sorry, it comes down to the business, or us, the studio, the creative. Like if
Yeah.
we're allowing them to walk on us, it's us. We can always just
Yeah.
stand up and say, hey, don't walk on me,
Stop
even
that.
if it's accidental, even if they didn't see us on the floor.
Right.
And so
Right.
I'd say that's really, that lesson. It just comes down to pushing back in a healthy and respectful way and say, look, we need to realign our priorities. We need to realign the timeline because this is collaborative. We are relying on you to help us because we're helping you. It's, and here's the part that's kind of tricky, like you mentioned it before. Like they're paying us to do a work for them.
Yeah.
So some people, they allow themselves to feel like they're employees. But look, I'm no one's employee. We work for ourselves. Me and Sarah work for ourselves. That's the reason why we work for ourselves, because we don't want to be employees anymore. We've felt what it feels like to be an employee and not be respected.
Have
And
we got stories
yeah,
for
we got
you?
stories. Sure, we'll talk about them. But with that, a lot of freelancers, they'll allow themselves to be put in this place of, you like, oh well, I do work for them kind of, so I guess I can let them boss me around and tell me, well, they need X, Y, and Z, even though that wasn't part of the deal, even though they're not paying for that. But like the kind of the buck stops with you. You have to demand
Yeah.
respect, and you have to demand and just say, hey, look, we're partners in this. We're not one's not over the other. We're
Right.
we're we're collaborating together for the success and benefit of your business. So
Totally. And our clients have, like, historically, they've just been so
we've
wonderful
had the
and
best
like,
clients. I talk about that all the time. The best clients.
yeah, like I really don't have like complaints, and like we're the chokehold of the business.
Yeah.
So if something's not working, we ultimately look in the mirror, even though that's hard, because nobody wants to
Yeah.
take
It is hard for you
responsibility.
to look in the mirror sometimes, right?
Oh, yeah. Hey, but like
And
I'm
myself.
telling your wife. But like I really think about that sometimes, and I'm like, if I want something to be better, I have to be honest. And there's actually a lot of freedom in being honest. And we just ultimately want to do good work and our best work. We're not perfect, but where the nice thing is you can always pivot. Like I've told this to Tim so many times. I'm like, look, if something's not working in the business, we're not a tree. Like, not to be, no pun intended, because our name is Stump and Root, but like, but we're not a tree.
We
It's
can
not
be
like
replanted.
we can pick up and leave. We can move. We can change things. And if we don't want to offer a service one day, we don't have to offer it. If we're like, hey, we're done with this kind of work, we can be done with it. That's the freedom in it. So all that to say, just encourage feedback and push clients to be involved creatively. Prompt them with specific questions. Don't be afraid to ask for clarity. And then obviously, like, your tone matters in that communication. So we just always want to aim to be sensitive to that. I know another lesson, Tim, you wanted to talk about is the branding and logo process. So I'd love to hear some of the lessons on that.
Yeah. I would say that like designing logos is one of my favorite things to do,
Mm-hmm.
because being a designer is one of my favorite things to do. And maybe I love being a designer because at the root of it, I love being an entrepreneur, because
Yeah.
entrepreneurship or business ownership is all about solving problems. Graphic design is all about solving problems. It's not about art. It's not about looking cute or whatever. The sole purpose of being a graphic designer is to solve problems visually. And obviously that goes back up to entrepreneurship and business. The best business ideas are the ideas that solve the biggest problems for the biggest amount a group of people, at least if you want to be successful, to make money.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, with that love of design, logos very much are solving a problem for a company. And logos are the whole thing about a logo is you want to represent the brand visually. Period. That's it. It doesn't have to mean anything necessarily, And for every single one of our clients, I give, for the most part, I give this logo presentation that goes over what a logo is, what it isn't, what the best kinds of logos are, and I go through the whole thing just to kind of get them on that playing field of like, all right, you understand now what a logo is and isn't. And I give examples of the different types of logos, and so I always try to clarify that with people that in McDonald's that doesn't mean anything. It's they're arches. There's no real deep meaning there. Like there might be visual call outs, but like, obviously yellow is really synonymous with hunger and same thing with red and yellow. And that's why those colors work so well with McDonald's because they like make you hungry. I'm almost getting hungry now to talk about it. But all that to say is when designing a logo, meaning is great if you can do it, but it doesn't have to. But something I love to do is I love in just intertwining meaning into the logos and brands and visual identity. I love doing that. And so I usually try to be clever with the designs. Like one of the first logos we did as Stump and Root was for our client Health Haven Advisors. And that logo, and I was really proud of it, they are a company that they specialize in providing administrative services for healthcare practices and hospitals. And so we actually helped come up with that name, Health Haven Advisors. And even with that, obviously came the logo and branding, and that was the second part of it. And so with the logo, it is a 6-pointed. It's like an asterisk almost, the design of the logo, and it was something I had thought about, where I'm like, how can I really intertwine this meaning into it? Because healthcare, obviously, everyone can use some kind of like a plus, like for health. Obviously, people use that plus a lot, like American Red Cross, and there's other companies that copy that same kind of visual style. But what I did was I took the shape of the Star of Life, they call it. And what I did was I separated it in such a way where it illustrated the top of it was the sun, the middle part was a mountain, and then the bottom part was a home. So it was kind of like this painting this picture of this haven, this beautiful imagery, and we kind of assigned different brand pillars to each of those like components of the logo. And
well, their tagline was where healthcare excellence meets its haven, because they wanted to show this all-in-one service and it's all covered under one roof. And so we took that, the name and then the tagline, and then you created like imagery around that. And it's really beautiful.
And when we presented those logos to the client, he literally like got teary-eyed. And it was like, man, what an incredible feeling it is when you can make a logo that so represents how he feels it should. And truly, it was such an amazing feeling. But where I didn't do that was with another client. And, it's frustrating because like, well, I did put a lot of work into this. And, if a client doesn't like the logo, they're right. If they don't, if they like it, they're right. If they don't like it, they're right. And it's a hard lesson to learn because you're like, well, I'm the designer, so I'm right. And I may be right in saying it's a good logo, but that doesn't mean it's the logo they would want for their brand, because the logo is representing them, Like if I design someone's outfit and I think they look great in it, and they could objectively look great in that outfit, but if it doesn't feel like them to them, if they're not going to say, I don't really like this, then they're right. It's like they get to wake up every day and they get to choose the clothes they want to wear. So they're right, and with that is a logo, because that represents your brand. That is the clothing of your company. It's like, I'm wearing our own logo right now. Like this is something that we represent ourselves. I have the logo right here. Sarah doesn't have hers, she has
I have a sticker.
and it's upside down.
Sorry.
But a logo is something of deep importance because in theory you shouldn't really be changing that, at least not very often if you're doing it right. And with this logo, I really try to put a lot of deep meaning into it, and I think the logo is very successful. I do stand by
Totally.
that, and I really do love that logo.
I remember 3 concepts of a logo were presented. Tim first showed it to me, and I told him I think they're going to go with number 1 because it
You talk about how
embodies their story brand, which is another thing that we cover. Story brand. We'll get more into that. It's like your brand's unique story and message, and it's how you differentiate yourself from your competitors. And it's a really cool concept and framework. But I said, I think they're going to go with number 1. And then they ended up going with number 1, 100%. And I think that's the power of just having good story, good visuals. It's like it all just kind of coincides together. You can kind of tell when something's a little off in branding or the logo. It's like, oh, it's not that it's bad. It's just maybe not them. Truthfully, all 3 of those different logos could have worked. They're on our website. If anyone wants to go to stumpandroot.co, you can look at our case studies of our past work and just see some of these visual representations of what we're talking about. And those 3 examples are there, but yeah, they went with the first one and they were able to see it in context. And that was really cool. And that was, I'll never forget him getting emotional about that. That was really special.
Yeah. And because I did that the right way, we had 3 full concepts. This other one, I only had 1 concept I'd showed him. And we had talked about this example before, but essentially, like, they weren't fully on board with the logo. It was something we threw in there as a free add-on, not Health Haven, the other company. And I was really frustrated and disappointed because I'm like, well, I put in so much time, and if they're going to say, well, maybe we'll commit to a logo if we see it can be really good. And like, no shade on this. We love this client, actually. But it left me frustrated, and the only person who's to blame is myself, and
Right.
And I'm like, and so I would say follow your process, even if it's for free. Even if you're like, oh, well, they get a lesser version of it. It's like, no, they should get the full thing. If you're promising this thing, do it fully,
Yeah.
And so if I'm giving someone a free logo, let me give them 3 versions of it and let me hear their feedback and respond to it. And the other way, it's like they also need to be committed to changing their logo if that's what you're going to be doing. So all it's to say, follow the process, stick to the process. Usually, almost 9 times out of 10, it won't fail you. It's something that is said routinely by many experts with entrepreneurship is that you fall to the level of your processes. If you are failing, if something gets messed up, you can always fall back on your process and you'll be still good to go. But if you fall and you don't have any processes, you're going to fall really far back and you won't know the way out, and processes give you the way out. So
yeah, definitely. I love how you said all that. Yeah, there's just so many. I feel like even each of these lessons could have their own podcast episode, but just for the sake of time, we wanted to share just a summary of them. Another one, it's pretty short, but it's having professional conduct. I think this is just something like that every business owner, freelancer, creative, it's a continuing lesson that everyone learns. But I think when you get to know clients, there can kind of be this relaxed vibe that's in the atmosphere, which is a good thing because it's like you're getting comfortable with each other. But sometimes it can be I could see where it could be easy to let professionalism slip. And especially with like words that come out, whether, it's maybe venting or, just saying something that you're like, oh, wait, I probably shouldn't have said that. And sometimes like, people don't understand jokes. Everyone's humor is so different. Tim and I are not from the area where we live. We're in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I'm from originally California. Tim's originally from New York, and we just have different humors, like independent of Lancaster. And Lancaster like really grew on me. It's a beautiful place to live, but it's just like a different culture in terms of relationship and communication. I would say that's independent of of what I grew up with, and especially Tim, like being from New York. So I think just as a quick lesson, like you just want to always be careful with what you say, and that not everybody's going to understand your humor, or you could mean something as a complete joke, or you're just saying something kind of in passing, and then someone hears it and they're like, wait, what? And if they don't know you well, they don't have a frame of reference for that. And so again, it's something that we've like learned over this almost past year. Is like we've been in business for almost a year to the date, and which is really exciting. It's just a little lesson, but our words have power. You know, there's death and life in the tongue, and we always just want to make sure we're lifting people up and encouraging and just being careful of what we say and everything, which would lead then next into kind of one of our final lessons, which is healthy studio operations. So I'd love to hear your feedback on that, Tim.
Yeah, this is one of those lessons that it should be in place for multiple reasons. One, it should be in place so that you can have healthy work life, like work home life boundaries as well. Like, and especially when it's such a small operation, it's not like we have an office we go into and our computers stay in the office and everything stays there. We work out of our own individual homes, you know, like my office is downstairs in my house, and like it's something that I can easily, because sometimes I will take my laptop upstairs and work for a little bit, and I try to set healthy boundaries so I'm not working too much, because I have a daughter and I have a wife, and I'm like, I need to set proper boundaries for that. But with that comes several lessons that you should take if you're a freelancer.
Yeah.
Especially if you're working with someone else. I think it's different if you're just working like as a solopreneur. It's like it becomes harder. But I would say, to the best of your ability, separate everything out of your personal life from your work life. And so that means, like, me and Sarah, since we're family, we just would text as opposed to messaging or emailing or whatever in a different platform. And with that, it's hard to separate like family talk with work talk.
Right.
And so something I was pretty big on implementing, like, all right, let's just use Slack. Let's just, anything that we're talking about work, because also it's easier to catalog stuff like, oh, well, when did we talk about this in the middle of, like, you see like parent, like stuff about like our family going on and whatever in the middle of like our text conversation. But it's like, all right, but I need to find this one thing we're talking about for our client. And so with that, Slack, use actual software for work, in general. Like I would say don't use Discord, because that's a little too casual. I would say use the tool that works best for you, but I would say use something that clearly distinguishes work from home life, because even Discord, like I use that personally, so I'm like, all right, if you can create that line as solid of a line as possible, if that line could be as, like it's immovable, and the clear distinction between work and home, the better it's going to be. Especially like the elephant in the room is like, me and Sarah are a man and a woman working in a studio, and so with that we have to create these healthy boundaries to not cross, because people assume all kinds of things, or it can appear this way. And so out of protecting my marriage, protecting the appearance of both of us, so we're above reproach in those ways, we just need to set those clear boundaries for the benefit of both of us. And so with that is, instead of using FaceTime, use Google Meet, or using Riverside for this. Or instead of using text message for work stuff, you're using Slack. And I think also setting healthy boundaries, unless it's an extreme like emergency. Don't text after work hours, because 9 times out of 10 you don't need to text about something, unless it's like, oh, by the way, the photo shoot that's coming up at 6 o'clock in the morning, I need the answer right away. And Slack, you can have a Slack where it doesn't send notifications after a certain time,
But
and
but 99% of the time, like, there's not really an emergency. Like, if you're doing your work and everything, then it's not an emergency. I think actually it's been such a game changer having that, because that's kind of, and it goes into kind of like the last lesson of like the freelance myth, which is like you can work whenever, wherever, but that, because it was so hard to separate work and just like your regular everyday life. And like I remember, so Tim and my sister, they have the most beautiful little daughter, and I remember one time we were like texting about a photo shoot and like to remember to bring something, and then I was looking for the like address of the photo shoot, and then you sent a picture of like you, Deborah, and your daughter, and it was such a sweet photo, and then I'm like getting distracted looking at the photo, and like and then it's like it's nice to have everything organized. With Google Meet too, what we do, and this has helped us so much, is so we actually record all of our meetings. We use a software. It's called Otter
Hmm.
AI. Yeah. We're not affiliated with them, but we really like it. It's called Otter AI. And
Well, hey, hold on. If you do want to use it, I can send you affiliate code.
yeah,
If you're
so
listening,
just reach out.
reach out and we'll get some kickback.
Yeah, I didn't know you had an affiliate code, but yeah, that's cool. Okay, so yeah, but that what it does is it actually summarizes your meeting for you, and it gives a action items, because like if you're having an hour long meeting, then you're going to forget stuff. And like, it can get a little chaotic. And so what it does is it will distinguish voices. So it'll be like, okay, well, Tim, your action items are this. Sarah, your action items are this. And then if you're in a meeting with a client, it will say what they need to do. It can summarize like emails and stuff, so you can send like follow-ups. It's really cool. But what those things have done, Slack, just having like, okay, don't text after a certain time, using video calls and recordings with Otter, is that it's made our meetings more impactful and intentional and productive, and we're getting work done. And that has helped the studio. And then just personally, it's like, wait, I don't feel like I have to have my phone on at 9 o'clock at night in case something happens. And, it kind of goes into that last thing. Like I said earlier, is like the hardest part, I think, about being a business owner, and freelancers definitely deal with this. Tim and I actually were both freelancers at one point before Stump and Root. Tim was working with like design clients and stuff. I was doing like coaching and helping people with like their social media, Pinterest, all that stuff. And it was fun. But part of why people get into freelancing is to create more freedom. And then ironically, you become a slave to your work because you feel like you can't shut it off. So it becomes your ball and chain, where it was once supposed to give you liberty. And having boundaries just for yourself, like forget if you were working with other people, just for yourself, will give you so much freedom. I think a big myth in business but in life is that if you have parameters in your life and boundaries, that somehow limits you. No, it actually gives you so much freedom, because the greatest version of you is not the, oh, I get to do whatever I want version. The greatest version of you is, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to hang out with someone like that. I'm not going to take on that kind of client. I'm not going to answer that text at 10 p.m. because I need to get good sleep. You put up these standards for your life, and then it actually elevates your life, and then you can show up more freely. So that's something that I think is probably the hardest part, arguably, and it's definitely something I've struggled with. I know, Tim, you have too. But if you can get that in check, then you will have a more successful business. And as a closing thought, you want to set yourself up for the business that you want, not that you have. Because like one day, like we do want to grow Stump and Root. Like we would bring on another person to hire, and then another person, and we wouldn't be texting with them. We wouldn't be FaceTiming them. So it's like, well, why don't we just implement those things now? So I think I wish we had implemented that sooner.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just been so great having it. I'm really grateful for it.
Yeah. And so just kind of closing on all these kind of lessons we've talked about, there's been so much, and there's a lot more. Obviously, I think every day we're learning a new lesson of entrepreneurship, but also running a creative studio, because they're kind of the same, and I think they can apply to both. But definitely specifically with running a creative studio, there's so much that you don't know until you're doing it. And some of the biggest lessons, at least the ones that stay with you, are the ones that cost you. Thankfully, the cost hasn't been that heavy. It's usually just been time cost, which technically is a money cost. There is a dollar to that. when we talk about client work or with like like kind of wrapping up conversations with when we had a meeting or just going over projects that we're working on, it's like we're talking in a podcast, and so that's kind of the benefit of now we're starting a podcast. Like, why does everyone need a podcast? No, but I think that we are the experts in our own fields, and I think we not just want to brag or be some like, look at us, we're some big whatever, but we want to share the wisdom that we have, and also part of it is like building in public. That's kind of mentioned the Expert Secrets book. That's something Russell Brunson was big on, and he mentioned in his book as well, is build in public. Like people cheer on people who are building in public, and I think that it's not just us. That's something I do on LinkedIn as well. Like, I love seeing people grow in their businesses and love seeing them grow in their offerings and being successful. And so with these lessons, I'm really hoping and praying that they spoke to you in a deeper way. And because they're speaking to us every day, and so now we have a good outlet for us to not just keep the wisdom to us, even though we do have conversations with other people, and I do try to give the wisdom I've learned in the ways that I can to other people. But I think it's like kind of the perfect outlet for us to, talk about a process, talk about growing a studio and lessons with that, and also marketing know-hows and things that, again, we have these conversations ourselves. We are talking about marketing and latest ad campaigns that really made us excited or whatever.
Or books we're reading. Like, we're both avid readers and listeners of audiobooks. So like, these are just
with my ears.
I read with my ears, and like, they're just conversations we're having anyway. Like, I think that actually kind of is what bonded Tim and I was like, oh wait, like, he's actually into a lot of the same things that I'm into, because like, we're actually very, very, very different people. We hold like the same values and things, and like Christianity and just like our beliefs and stuff, but in terms of like, he's from New York, I'm from California, just have like kind of different we're
personalities.
Different people. Yeah, I'm very sensitive. Tim is very
I'm
blunt.
very offensive.
He hates coffee, which I think is so weird. I think it's so weird because you fit the like LinkedIn.
Racist.
No, wait, let me just say you fit.
You're Puerto Rican, so you should like coffee.
No, that's not what I said. You fit the like LinkedIn business owner vibe. The only thing that you don't fit into is that you don't drink coffee. That's just so weird. So anyway, I just had to throw that out there.
Well,
What bonded us were these, just like these conversations. I was like, wait, he like is into funnels and he understands branding and like he actually values it. That was, I think, the light bulb moment for us, because we have worked with companies that do not care about branding and design and marketing. They say they do, but in actual practice, they didn't. And I'm talking before Stump and Root, because we actually worked at two different companies with each other prior, and then, had just kind of our own journeys and stuff even before that. So all that to say, we're just grateful to kind of finally hook up the mics and just share the conversations that we've naturally been having. So we hope that you enjoyed this podcast, and you can find us at stumpandroot.co. I am Sarah, this is Tim, and we're just so grateful to be able to share this podcast with you guys. So thank you so much for listening.
And see you in the next episode of Dragon Ball Z.
Okay, don't do that. You have to edit that out.
Bye, guys.
Okay, bye, guys. Gosh.